Hello, everyone. This is Liz. Happy Monday. I'm here live from the Derry Public Library's New Hampshire room, and today is Director Day. So, as I promised, I am going to go a little bit more mainstream now, not completely. I'll do someone very arty next week, but no violence to eyes, so nothing Fulci level today. But I did want to talk about one of my personal favorite directors, and as I like to call him, King of the Nerds, Guillermo del Toro. You probably know him from a lot of things because he's been around for a while. Hellboy, if you're a comic book fan. If you are a more art film fan, you probably know him from Pan's Labyrinth and The Devil's Backbone. Or if you're an Oscar person, you probably saw The Shape of Water sweep the Oscars. In 20 for 2017 and 2018 technically. But man, that was a great year for me. Just like finally, people are recognizing my Guillermo. But I am here to talk about his humble beginnings and how he became, again, king of the nerds in Hollywood. So let's get started. He was born October 9th in Guadalajara, Mexico. And he was born in 1964, so he's only 55 years old, although he still looks wicked young. I think I was I think it's because he's a big nerd, so I was gonna go like, oh, he's got to be around my age in his 30s. Oh wait, no. Anywho, he was actually born to a fairly well-off family. His father was an automotive entrepreneur, but was a fairly strict household. He did like horror, he did like monster movies. So as strict as his household was, very strict Catholic household, his parents still let him kind of explore the films that he loved. And so he grew up with a lot of the 1950s monster movies. Frankenstein, became his favorite book. And he actually made short films in high school. So he loved going to movies and theaters as a child and a teen, which is something we start to see not so much with the filmmakers who were very prevalent in like the 50s, but filmmakers that got their start from the 70s onward. We're starting to see a theme of they went to movies and got inspired. The film brat generation, if you will. There's a great story I remember him telling on this Bravo. It was this little short series called The 100 Scariest Movie Moments, and he was talking about John Carpenter's The Thing, and he said, "Oh, I went to a theater in Guadalajara with a whole bunch of people seeing it, and we were, in his words, quote, it was a theater full of happy Mexicans." But he said, like, we were going nuts watching this, and he's like, I don't get why this wasn't a hit in America because we loved it. I do love that story. Just an enthusiasm not only for The Thing, but for going to movies and having a theatrical experience. Of course, he studied filmmaking at school. He went to the University of Guadalajara, and he spent a lot of the 80s doing makeup effects. He didn't first go to directing. He made Super 8 movies and whatnot, but he studied under Dick Smith, who is a fairly famous makeup artist, or legendary, I should say. But I guess the only famous makeup artist to like lay people is Rick Baker, but if you're in film, you hear Dick Smith and you're like, oh yeah. Anywho, he spent a lot of the 80s doing makeup effects and creature effects, and he got to start doing like TV shows, one episode directing. So he directed episodes of this Mexican TV series. Fun fact: Alfonso Cuarón also got some early jobs directing episodes as well. So his first feature comes in 1993 with Chronos. This is a Spanish language feature. It won 9 Ariel Awards from the Mexican Academy of Film, so that's kind of the Mexican equivalent of the Oscars. And it got some good attention at Cannes. And it also was his first collaboration with longtime collaborator and friend, Ron Perlman. It also, James Cameron kind of noticed it, was like, this guy is great and I want to see what else you can do. So James Cameron became one of the first big supporters of Guillermo del Toro. His follow-up was not as well received and definitely not a personal favorite to Guillermo del Toro. So he followed it up with Mimic in 1997. Mira Sorvino starred. It was Miramax produced. There's some good things about this. This is the movie that introduced him to Doug Jones, who also became a collaborator with him. But the Miramax treatment, specifically Harvey Weinstein demanding the film be like really edited up. This was, definitely not Harvey Weinstein's most egregious crime. He did also have a reputation with young and new filmmakers of just completely taking control of their films and editing them in ways that they didn't want. And fun fact, James Cameron almost got into a physical fistfight with Harvey Weinstein over his treatment of Guillermo del Toro. Um, so Guillermo kind of needed to recharge himself creatively, so he returned to Spanish language films with The Devil's Backbone in 2001. So this is a ghost story that takes place at the end of the Civil War, and it's also a film that utilizes the backdrop of the Civil War to talk about the sins that are covered up in the midst of war. It is a great film. If you have never seen it, I would highly recommend it. And then he goes back to Hollywood for Back to Back in 2002. He makes Blade 2. If you are a fan of The Strain and you've seen Blade 2, you definitely see the origins of his vampire design. And in 2004, he reunites with Ron Perlman again for Hellboy, which is the film that really breaks Guillermo del Toro out in Hollywood. So he's had a lot of moderate successes before. Hellboy, I would say, for American audiences, is his "Look at Me, Here I Am" film. And definitely it made enough money, but it definitely became kind of, I would say, a sleeper hit. So not a blockbuster, but enough people liked it and it got a sequel in 2008. In 2006, he made what I still think is his best film to date, his opus, considered by many, Pan's Labyrinth, which is a wonderful film, a dark fairy tale, definitely a Grimm-style fairy tale, which also takes place at the end of the Spanish Civil War. The Francoists are the enemy. It's about this young girl. Her father has died. Her mother is married off, we're not sure how happily, to this ruthless Francoist general, and she is pregnant. So you have this young girl going through an incredibly scared time, and she's walking around a little labyrinth near her new home. She finds a fawn that says, if you can complete these 3 tasks, like, you'll become a princess. It is an amazing film. I don't want to give too much away, because if you haven't seen it, you absolutely should. It's one of the best Spanish language films I think ever made. And again, it's his best film. This is also when he started really utilizing Doug Jones for physical work. He plays the fawn. A great movie, and again, a good film about the crimes of Franco's Spain, and I think that's something that at least American audiences really don't know a lot about. So goes without saying, got a lot of international attention, got a lot of Ariel Awards in Mexico again. Also got some Oscars. So nominated for Best Foreign Film, lost to The Lives of Others, which The Lives of Others is a fine film. I really wish Pan's Labyrinth won, but I'm like, well, it lost to a worthy competitor. It lost Best Original Screenplay to Little Miss Sunshine, a movie that I do love, but if I had to compare the two, come on, Pan's Labyrinth. On the bright side, it did win cinematography, so yay. But Guillermo del Toro would clean up at the Oscars in the future. 2013, he directs my favorite film of his, Pacific Rim, and this was a film that just did not do well at the box office. It did well overseas, but I think it has been vindicated on home video in terms of being a great film. So this is the film where it's the giant robots fighting giant monsters. It is a love letter to the kaiju films and Japanese kaiju films of the 50s through the 70s, and the mech anime, like the Gundams and whatnot, from the I would say roughly 1970s to the 80s. There are so many shout outs to old movies, to old anime. There's a scene where it's a shot-for-shot look of Giant Robo. This is why I love Guillermo del Toro. He is a nerd through and through, and he makes movies about stuff that he loves, and I think that's why these movies resonate so much. Pacific Rim is cheesy and silly. It's got an amazing soundtrack, but it is 100% a love letter to that genre, and if you like that genre, you are going to love this movie so much. 2015, he makes Crimson Peak, which is another love letter, this time to gothic horror and Hammer films. That stars Tom Hiddleston taking a break from being Loki, and Jessica Chastain is a great, twisted Wuthering Heights style villainess. It is an underseen film. I would recommend watching it. I think people went in expecting a slasher and they don't understand what gothic horror is. So some people were disappointed, but I think it is a great example of like the old horror stories that people would read in the 1800s. And then 2017 comes along, and it is he releases The Shape of Water, which is beautiful, you would never expect it, a beautiful love story between a woman and the creature from the Black Lagoon. That's exactly what he wanted it to be. He's like, it's the creature from the Black Lagoon if it was a love story. And it also does a lot of, I think, great subtle things as well in this one. The creature is technically the damsel in distress, and the damsel in distress character is the hero. She's not a virginal princess. She's someone who has a life. She's a 30-something-year-old woman. She swears. She has, again, has a life, so to speak. She's not just a lady in waiting. And there's also a good commentary about the conformity of 19 Cold War America, and how a lot of the main characters in the movie are people who are marginalized. They're people who are deaf. They're people who are mute. They're people who are black. They're people who are gay. And they're all in some way or another threatened by this Colonel character, who is Michael Shannon, who just anyone who essentially doesn't look like him he sees as threatening. And he is trying to get this Gillman creature. It ends up winning Best Picture at the Oscars, which is rare for any kind of a genre feature. And also Guillermo del Toro wins Best Director, which I'm like, oh, long time coming. And it makes up for the Pan's Labyrinth losses. So what are his other activities? He is a writer. He wrote the Strain books. He also produces a lot of movies. Most recently, he produced the film Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And he makes TV show Troll Hunters. And he all... blanked, sorry. But I think this is why he's also well liked in Hollywood. He is someone who, if he really likes something and he really believes in a project, he will make sure and help you make it happen. Another, in terms of a real life thing that isn't as happy, in 1997, his father was kidnapped. And again, another case of James Cameron being a great guy. James Cameron gave him over $1 million to help pay the ransom, but since then, the entire family moved out of Mexico and has since lived in exile. And that's how Guillermo del Toro puts it. He's like, we can't go back to our home. And he lives in the US, which he loves, but he's, of course, commented on the rhetoric he sees. And it's like, I feel like I'm not safe in either home anymore. What is he doing now? Well, he was working on Night Alley, but then the pandemic happened. So who knows when we'll see that movie. If I would say one bad thing against Guillermo del Toro, it would be that there are always things where he goes, I want to do this. And then he says, I want to do 5 things. About one of them will happen. So a whole lot of us nerds get our hopes up. So why is he important? Well, I think the best thing I could say is he is an example of mixing genre, which is usually, I guess in modern film, and pretty much since film history, has overall been regarded as low art. So horror, sci-fi especially. And he mixes it with high art. He's also a very visually creative person. If I had to give a comparison, he's like Tim Burton in that he does have a very distinct visual look, or Wes Anderson as well. He's also a political filmmaker, and he uses the genres like horror and fantasy and sci-fi to get his points across, and that actually harkens back to the 50s films that he watched. Back then, you couldn't be extremely overt with your politics in films, and you kind of had to find ways to subtly make your point. And as he's talked about who the villains in his films are, and he says overall they are united by authoritarianism, be they the Francoists in Pan's Labyrinth, the Nazis in Hellboy, the careless industrialist in Chronos, or the Colonel in The Shape of Water. They're all people who are, again, authoritarian and very rigid in their beliefs in terms of who deserves to have a place at the table. So, again, I always hear people say, well, I don't want politics in my art, and I say that's impossible. But I guess I would say if you want a political film that is not extremely overtly political, Guillermo del Toro would be a good match for you. And another reason why I love him, and this is a very personal reason, but again, I kind of look at him, he's one of us. He is a nerd. He loves genre features. He's not someone trying to cynically exploit this stuff like I would say Michael Bay does with Transformers, who's just like, people will like this, it'll make money around the world. He sees this as, this is a story I want to tell, and I think that is a hallmark of a great filmmaker. I mean, all filmmakers have taken jobs to make money, just like actors. You have to, but I think the sign of a filmmaker who's not just a director for hire, but an actual artist is someone who generally says, this is a story that I want to tell and I need to tell. And I think that's why Guillermo's great. Also, another personal story. I did see, I met him very briefly at New York Comic Con in 2012. I was at a legendary panel, and this was, we were talking about Pacific Rim, and he comes in, he was a little late. He just got off the plane from California. And he comes in, he's got his accent, and he goes, "So, my studio told me I can't show you the Pacific Rim trailer yet. However, I don't give a blank." And he proceeded to show us the trailer, and a whole bunch of nerds in the hall just went crazy. And afterwards, as everyone else was clearing out, of course, there was a rush of people who wanted to talk to him and get stuff signed, me included. Um, while he had to kind of get somewhere else, he did say, he's like, "I can't talk to everybody, but I want to sign everything, so just give me all your stuff and come by this table later to pick it up." And he did that. And I think that is just a great example of someone who not only appreciates art and the passion behind art and the passion behind, nerds, but he also appreciates his fans. And this is something I see a lot in the horror and sci-fi community, is the people who are creatives in that space value their fans on such a level because they know that they are the reason they have a career. So I can attest, Guillermo del Toro, not only a very creative, great creative, but seems like a really swell dude. And I still want to tour his house one day because his house is essentially a museum to props and monster movies. So, wow, this is going on long, so I'll wrap it up. Where to start? I would say I would actually check out his Spanish language features first. Definitely Pan's Labyrinth and the Devil's Backbone. For his English language features, I would say Pacific Rim and Shape of Water. But I think any film other than Mimic is a good entry point because Guillermo is a very versatile filmmaker. So regardless of what your taste is, you're bound to find something you like. Thank you for watching, and I will see you tomorrow with What's on Netflix. Have a good day.